This story has been recorded at an Addictive Eaters Anonymous meeting in New Zealand. You can email us at contact@aeanz.org.
And because this is the first Friday of the month, we now have a speaker who's going to share her story, and I think we'll look at Kate tonight.
Thanks, Robin. My name's Kate, I'm an addictive eater.
Hi.
It's good to be here, and thank you for the opportunity to share my story, which most people already know, but I'll share it again. I only have one story of what it was like and what happened, and what it's like now, of course, is an ongoing. That's the ongoing story. That's God's bit. But I can tell you what it was like and what happened and what it's like up till now. So I first found out about a 12-step program for food addiction through the doctor. I went to the doctor to get the slimming pills. When I was telling her about what I was doing, she suggested a 12-step fellowship for food addiction, and I didn't really like that idea. That wasn't what I went there for, and I went away and sort of thought about it for a bit, and I say that it planted the seed, because the next thing I know, 2 people came round to see me. I don't remember ringing, but I must have, because 2 people came round to see me, and they shared their stories with me. And then I remember one of the ladies taking me to a meeting in her car, and that was my first meeting. So that was quite a few years ago, and I went to the doctor not because I was overweight. I wasn't overweight, but I wanted the slimming pills because I knew I was going to be overweight at any minute, because I would eat huge amounts of food, and then I controlled my weight through vomiting and exercise, and I was always so terrified that, because inside I felt like an obese person, because I knew what I was doing in secret, although I looked normal on the outside because of the vomiting and the exercise. And I would try and starve in between the binges for as long as possible. And the older I the shorter the periods in between the binges, the shorter the starving. I wasn't as good at it as what I had used to be when I was younger. And but what I believe now is that it is just the obsession and the compulsion, just the disease getting stronger, and just that powerlessness over it. But some people talk about the switch going down, and that's what it was like for me. I was very obsessed with the starving and the being thin, and I called myself a failed anorexic. I am a failed anorexic. I was never actually diagnosed with anorexia, but I wanted to be anorexic. That was my thing, and I would fantasize about that. And I knew the Karen Carpenter story, and I'd seen this other movie about another woman that was really, really thin and had to go to hospital. I never saw myself as being hospitalised, but I wanted to be really, really thin. I don't know what was going to happen when I got there, but that was what I was obsessed about. Somehow life was going to start And I couldn't just be slim like a normal person. I had to be really, really thin. And in that obsessive thinking that I had around the anorexia, I was very, very competitive. And it was definitely the best of the best versus, like I was very judgmental about people with that thinking, and it was very much if I was really thin, then I was better or the best. That was the ultimate. And it's really, really crazy thinking, but anyway, that's what it was like. And I could never live up to it. When I was younger, I was able to starve for several days at a time, but then the switch thing, it would just be something, I don't know what, I don't know how it would happen or what, just all of a sudden I would just want to eat so badly. And I knew once I got to this certain, I don't know whether it was a feeling or a thinking or something would happen, and I just couldn't starve at that point when that happened. I couldn't be that person. I was now the fat person, and I would stay like that until I didn't know when, and then at some stage I would change again, and then I would just be absolutely obsessed with anorexia and being thin, and then I'll go like that for a while. But the thin bit, the thin obsession, was never as long as the just being so obsessed with wanting to eat all the time. That was always the one that won out, and I hated that. I was so ashamed of that. I felt like I was so weak and I was such a loser because I was like that. I was very judgmental of overweight people, very mean to overweight people in my mind, and it was all this whole life that I had in my head no one knew about. All of that was a complete secret. Nobody knew about that anorexic thinking, nobody knew about all the judgmentalness or the horrible thinking that I had about, overweight people, and all of that was all a secret. And on the outside, I was, I was trying to be a nice person, good, follow the rules and do everything right. And that was the intention anyway. So I was very average, I was average at school, I was an average person all the time, I was an average weight, I was an average academic, I was average looking, I was average, did everything averagely, didn't do anything excel, and I wasn't really, really useless, and I wasn't really, really good. I was just in the middle all the time. And so that was fine. And then, I don't know, I suppose most of that real time that I've just talked about, I sort of feel like was around the high school years. Before that, I don't really remember anything particularly outstanding when I was a child. I mean, I wanted to eat, I stole food, I'd steal, if I could get away with it, I would take things, but I suppose I didn't think of it so much as stealing because it was just like at home. But we had to ask for food at home when we were growing up. You couldn't just take things. So, of course, if I'm taking things and I'm not asking and I'm doing it secretly when no one's around, then that is kind of stealing, And so I would do that. But I was quite fearful, so I wasn't really into sort of things like stealing money and stuff like that because I would be too scared to do things like that. But anything that was going for free, or anything that I thought I might be able to get away with, like stealing an apple or something like that, drink or whatever. Always go for the biggest and all of that, you know. I would do that. I would eat lollies off the footpath, you know, and, you know, food off trees and things like that if I could get away with it, and make myself sick and all of that type of thing. But I didn't think of that as being unusual as a child. And yeah, so it was really at high school when I sort of feel like I got quite obsessive in my thinking. And then, you know, when I left school and got a job, I had my own money, and I started drinking and smoking cigarettes, and, you know, that all, you know, sort of helped with the starving. Joined a gym and did, you know, got right into the exercise, and just carried on like that really. And I guess I could see as the years were going by that I wasn't really making much of my life, getting ahead really, or doing anything. And I could see, you know, my friends seemed to be able to, you know, like, I don't know, do things. I was always so scared of doing things. It was another thing that I just sort of thought, I should be better, you know, come on, just, you know, I don't know, tomorrow's going to be another day, and I'd have these ideas, but I never seemed to be able to really get anything started. And, you know, I go from relationship to relationship with men, and you know, not very good with money, and got into drugs quite a lot, you know, liked to be high, and I'd spend my money on alcohol and drugs and food, and I was just in a cycle of, if I was starving, I would be using lots of drugs and alcohol, and if I was eating, I would be eating and watching TV and drinking coffee, smoking cigarettes. And that's basically all that my life was. There isn't really anything more. That's just what I did until I came here. I was 28. And so I didn't really achieve anything in that time. I tried to do a few, you know, like I moved to a new city once. I think I lasted about 6 months, and that all turned to hell in a handbasket. And I made a big mess of that. And then another time I went down south, and I got a job down there, and I ended up getting fired from that job. Oh my God, it sounds terrible, doesn't it? But I guess I wouldn't be here if everything was going great. So, anyway, so at some stage along that path, I thought that I was, I went to the doctor to get those slimming pills, and I suppose I was looking for the easier, softer way, and I thought, you know, vomiting, you know, it was hard work. I could get the pills, I would just have to swallow a pill and do the same thing. I tried them, you know, I bought them, you know, for $20 or $30 in the weekend, but if you could get them from the doctor, then, you know, you'd get a whole lot, and it wouldn't cost very much money. So, but anyway, the doctor didn't play the game, and so she did, you know, suggest this, and so I came along, and really what I wanted was the life. You know, I wanted what other people, what I could see my friends doing. You know, I wanted to be able to make decisions and grow up and have relationships and buy houses and travel and have money in the bank and, you know, do what I, you know, things that I thought were sensible and normal. And I suppose that's what I was looking for when I came here, really, to be quite honest. And And, you know, when people talked about the freedom from the food and they talked about, you know, not being obsessed and being able to, you know, live on a weighed and measured food plan when I came to, you know, a meeting and, you know, heard all of these things, it all sounded so easy. And, you know, and sure, yeah, great, I'll have that, I'll have that. But of course when I tried it, it was a lot harder because of the obsession, because of the mental obsession. And, you know, in the big book it talks about a physical allergy as well. But really the mental obsession, oh my gosh, when I first got that food plan, I just went completely mad. I hated it so much. It was just like, I felt like life was over. I felt so miserable. I remember I was outside weeding this piece of grass and I just remember thinking, oh, I can't do this, it's too hard, and going inside and eating. And that started this, like, I didn't know what was ahead. And I often think about that time, all those years when I was coming to meetings and still eating, because, you know, what could I learn from it? You know, what was that experience teaching me that I can do differently or be different? And to a certain extent, I guess it is my personality, the way I am, that I had to be in the fellowship eating for a long time before I could see the solution and want it. I see that same behaviour and attitude even now with other things. Like, I haven't changed, that basic way that I am hasn't actually changed. It is frustrating, but I have to just accept that that is the person that I am, that's the way that I am. I mean, one of the good things about that is the fact that I can say to anybody, if you are coming along and you can't or won't or whatever, stop eating, keep coming. It doesn't matter, you know. It is possible to get that freedom and get off the food even after years of coming to meetings still eating, because that was my experience. So, you know, that's a good thing. And so when I started coming to meetings and, you know, was continuing to eat and not really, on the face of it, you know, it really looked like, it must have looked like I didn't really want the program, you know. I think I must have looked like that. And I guess there's a saying that I've often thought about, because when I was younger, you know, I spent a period of time quite heavily involved in the church and in Christianity. And there's a saying that's often stayed with me, and it's that better not quote me on this one, I'm probably going to get it wrong, but what happens in secret, or what God sees in secret, He rewards openly. And so the way I see it is that in all those years where I was coming and eating, secretly in my heart, I actually didn't want to live on a food plan. I wanted to be able to eat what I wanted, whenever I wanted, and be slim. And what I was hiding in my heart was coming out in my actions. I couldn't be something that I wasn't in my heart, but I couldn't change my heart either, because it just was, that's where I was at. And I couldn't not be there until I had moved away from that place, and it just took time and experiences. But, you know, thank you God that I did move away from that place. And it was very important all the times of trying to be on a food plan. Even though I didn't stick to it, I would give up or whatever. I believe that all of those times were so important because it gave me a comparison, a difference. Whether it was a few months on the food plan or a few weeks, when I'll go back to eating, there'd be a relief, just like it talks about in the doctor's opinion, that cycle. I love the doctor's opinion, I just relate to it so much. It would be like, I'll just have one, or I'll be able to get back on my food plan tomorrow, or I'll just eat today, or whatever it was. In some way in my mind I would justify it, it was going to all be okay. Or even talks about it in the big book, sometimes there's not really a lot of thought before picking up the first one. And that was true for me too. And but anyway, I pick up the first one, and then just this relief, and then soon followed by, and this got worse and worse as I went along. Just the being fully in the obsession and just in that cycle of now trying to stop. And okay, well I'm going to stop after this one. Okay, well I'm going to stop. And so, and telling myself or kidding myself that I'm going to be able to, and it just going on and on and on for ages. And then eventually something would happen, and then I'd be able to have a food plan meal or somehow get back on my food plan for a period of time. And eventually, after a long time, I started really seeing that there was real freedom being on that food plan. And because this program is for people who want it, not for people who need it. And I had to want it. And until I got to that stage, I was not able to stop eating. And I am just so grateful to have got to that stage, because I am a hopeless addict, and I can't get well on my own. So I've needed everybody here to be keeping on coming and sticking to their food plans and being surrendered and showing me a solution and being so patient with me for all that time. So I got a sponsor and rang my sponsor every day and read out my food plan and read pages 86, 87 and 88 of the big book, came to meetings every day and got a job, be self-supporting, and that was quite a lot of structure and stability, starting to be formed in my life, which was really good. And I always now, sometimes life can, be a bit, it's, ups and downs and be a bit messy, and can be distracting. Things come along and they distract me. But I've always got that I was given when I came here. Get to your meetings, ring your sponsor, read the big book, write your food plan out, get on your knees in the morning, get on your knees at night. I have that structure in my life, and I have always got that, no matter what else is going on. And, if things seem a bit like, whoa, just go back to the basics. And everything is fundamentally okay. I have a great life. I'm very fortunate. So these days, I was told that addiction swaps from substance to substance, and for an addict to get well, generally they will need to put down all substances, whatever they're using. That seems to be the way that it needs to be with this disease. And I was smoking cigarettes when I came into the fellowship. I had stopped drinking and stopped taking the drugs. I wasn't taking any medication, but I was still smoking cigarettes. I was still drinking coffee, I think, although I think I stopped that pretty early. Oh, no, I was drinking coffee, that's right. And of course the eating. And my sponsor had said to me about the smoking, put everything down and have one lot of pain. And I guess I wasn't prepared to do that. I didn't have the willingness to do it. I knew that, I did believe that that was the answer and that that was the right thing to do. But when it came to actually doing it, putting it into practice, I was just so fearful. I just had that, just like with the food plan, just like, well, what's the point in living kind of attitude. I know that's not good, but anyway, that's me. So I didn't put the cigarettes down. I kept on smoking for quite a long time, but once I got to the stage, I like to say by the grace of God, because I just think it's such a miracle, and I know that I couldn't have done it by myself, but this is what happened. My sponsor had said to me, I think you should go out there and get the eating out of your system. She'd been sponsoring me for about 5 years, and I'd had a sponsor for about 2 years before that, ate the whole way through all of that sponsorship. And she said, I don't think I'm helping you. She said, it's not that I'm not going to sponsor you, but I think you need to go and get all the eating out of your system, and when you're ready to get serious, you give me a ring. And I was so thrilled with that, because I had the safety of the fellowship and the safety of knowing that my sponsor was still there, but she was giving me the freedom to just go and do what I needed to do. And I ate up a storm, and I couldn't be bothered with the vomiting anymore. I'd had enough. It was just I just didn't want to do it. I was having to go to such extremes to make myself sick, because I really didn't want to be doing it. And it was terrible things that I would do to make myself sick. Anyway, so I was quite happy to give all of that up. And so then I got fat. For the first time in my life, I actually was fat. I was overweight, like there was no hiding it. And I actually didn't really even care. I quite liked having big boobs. Like it was the first time in my life that I'd had something you could actually hold on to. And I quite liked that. And if I squashed them, I actually had a bit of cleavage. And that was quite cool. So, and I had all these curves and that, but I didn't really care. I just thought, okay, that's fine. And but I started feeling really the physical effects of the eating for the first time, and I would get the night sweats, and I would get the dry horrors, and just all these physical things that I hadn't experienced when I was doing all the vomiting. And so that really quickly brought me to my knees, actually. And I did eventually ring my sponsor and ask her if she would help me, because I realised that in that time of all that eating and feeling sick, that I wasn't actually going to ever get well while I was smoking. That it was just, I could see that the exercise, the smoking, the eating, I might make a decision to be, to get back on my food plan, but I'd made 100 addictive decisions before that, and I was acting addictively in all these other behaviours that was just leading. I was constantly picking up the first one, whether it was the food or not, in my lifestyle. And I just realised that I just everything had to go. So I rang my sponsor and asked her if she would help me after, doing a whole lot of mucking around with the cigarettes. And when I rang her, I knew I wasn't going to be able to do it, but I rang her anyway, even though I knew I wasn't going to be able to stop. But I knew I had to stop. It was a really weird thing. And anyway, she said that she would help me. And I haven't had to have a cigarette since then, and I've pretty much, sort of been on a food plan since then. So I take my sobriety from when I finished with the cigarette patches 3 months later. But actually after that, there was one day where I was on a food plan, I wasn't smoking, and I actually did pick up the first one again when I was having my evening meal, and my finger went out onto the plate after I'd finished the meal and picked up a piece of food that was left on the plate, tiniest little bit of food, and in my mouth it went, and I didn't even know what I'd done. It just was so involuntary, and I just went mad. All of a sudden I just went mad. I just felt all this fear, and I just felt like I was really unsafe, and just, I don't know, and what's that saying? Like a terrible calamity was about to happen. And I rang somebody in the fellowship and they said, get to a meeting. And I'd picked up the first one, and it was just, I feel like that was my higher power showing me my powerlessness, that it's not just about being able to stick to a food plan, that I actually can't stick to that food plan without the help of a higher power. And I know I've talked a lot about the food plan, and I've talked a lot about food, and I guess that's because that's kind of, you know, in some ways still where I'm at, and you know, I'm always, you know, working the steps is something that it's something that I'm always going to do, always be working the steps all the time, including step 1. And I do think that what I know for sure is that I am able to live on a weighed and measured food plan, and I have done that for quite some years. And I know that God is doing for me what I can't do for myself because of that. And I know that this solution in this program and freedom from addiction is not about the food plan. It's more than that. And I see that freedom in other people, that this program is more than the food plan. I find it hard to see in myself, so I find it hard to share about that. Because while I've been on the food plan, and over these years, I still, you know, I've shared over the years about being obsessed with the pumpkin and being obsessed with the tuna fish and stuffing my cups and doing all of those things. And yeah, so I know that today I don't want all the head drama that goes along with the stuffing of the cups and the eating of the pumpkin and the eating of the tuna fish. I don't want all of that, even though I'm on a food plan. And so I want to let go of all of that. And, you know, that's just by the grace of God, one day at a time. I'm glad to have that different way of thinking about that. And the other thing is integrity. I've never really known what that is, never really understood that word, but I think I do understand what that means today, because I'm the sort of person that when my parents went out, I was in the cupboards, I was under the bed looking at the pornography that we're not supposed to look at. I was drinking the miniatures in the lounge if my sisters and brothers hadn't got there first and it was already water. I was always doing something that I wasn't supposed to do the minute the back was turned. And that's dishonest. And I am naturally like that. But I think integrity is where you can live your life and anybody could like have a video of you and you wouldn't be doing dodgy things. You would just be doing normal, everyday things. Not that I'm not, I wouldn't be perfect, I'd still be a normal person, get angry or whatever. But not be secretly stuffing my cups or wanting more and all of that type of thing. Always starts with the food, I think, for me. But it goes into other areas of my life. That is what I think. Recovery is. And that's what I see. I hope you're going to cut this bit out. So anyway, and that I feel grateful that I want that. And because that's not me normally, not me naturally, but I do want that. And so every now and then, I have to tell myself about these stupid things that I do, with the food and, with my emotional outbursts, not being able to control my anger and all of that type of thing, because I do believe that it will get better. And, I'm really grateful to have this opportunity. It's really good. I feel like I have the most purpose in my life that I've ever had right now. I feel like I'm able to do more and contribute more than I've ever done in my life before. And, it's not earth-shattering by any stretch of the imagination, but it is in my little world. So, thank you for asking me to share. John?